This housing first model has been an abject failure across the country. Every place that's really embraced it, the problem's gotten worse. But there's very little correction that happens, very little behavioral change that happens in someone's life while they're incarcerated. And that's why you see such high level of recidivism of people leaving and then repeating. They haven't changed those underlying behaviors. And that's one of the core things that we focus on at the Other Side Academy and at the Other Side Village is let's focus on those underlying behaviors that led to the addiction, that led to the criminal behavior. 7 out of 10 of all of our graduates since we first started have been able to remain crime-free, drug-free, and employed.
Welcome to Utah Stories. So, if I told you that I got an idea where I want to take career convicts and criminals and take them out of prison and let them live in a mansion, no ankle bracelets, no bars, no chains, and let them work at a moving company, you'd probably say that I'd be crazy. But the guest I have on the program did exactly that, and he's been doing that with his team at the Other Side Academy for the past 10 years. Thanks for joining me, Tim.
It's a real pleasure. And to add to that, that team runs one of the top rated moving companies in the state of Utah. Has won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award, all by this group of people who otherwise would be incarcerated.
It's just, to me, I mean, when you just think about it at face value, it sounds like the most crazy idea.
Well, it turns out they're really good at going into people's homes and moving valuables. Just now they're going out the front door instead of out the window.
So when you sent out that first truck, did you have any hesitation? What if they just take that truck to a fence and just get rid of the merchandise? And
It, it it certainly was something that we thought about, but it wasn't an unproven model, and we felt really confident that we had the right culture to make it. You know, in reality, a lot of moving companies hire people who have records, and they just aren't upfront about it. The people that they hire are people who struggle to get other jobs, and working on a moving company is a lot of physical labor and hard to get. And so sometimes people who have records are working on that crew because they have a hard time getting somewhere else. But you just don't know that they have those records. We're upfront about it, say here's who our guys are. And if you read our reviews, hundreds and thousands of 5-star reviews, you'll see
yeah,
people are blown away with the quality. They talk about how charming they are, how professional they are, how polite they are, how hard they work. They
yeah,
hustle, running back and forth from the house to the truck because you'll ask them and they'll say, "We're working on saving our life."
yeah. We hired them 6 years ago to move our house, and
Yeah,
they
how'd
and they
it
did
go?
they did an awesome job, a really great job there, and they were so friendly. Like I can't imagine you could hire another moving company where the guys are so eager to please and friendly and just outgoing and nice and so I still have to wrap my head around the idea that you weren't going to put ankle bracelets on these guys. You weren't going to monitor them. You weren't going to put bars on the windows. They could sneak out. What gave you the confidence that they wouldn't in lieu of that they're doing this in lieu of spending 10, 20, 30 years in prison?
It was because we saw a model that we based our model upon a model that had been around since the early 70s called Delancey Street, and very successful helping people turn their lives around who had destroyed their lives through criminal behavior and addiction. And most of their crimes are drug related. And so they had such success. They ran a moving company, and we saw how well they did continually. One of the top-rated moving companies in the areas where they operate in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and we actually had some of their leaders who had left Delancey Street that we hired, who were now running our moving company. So it wasn't something brand new. We had a proven team, we had a proven model, and we felt really confident that as long as we could keep the culture of accountability and responsibility strong, which we've been able to do, we felt like we could really excel doing this.
Yeah, and it is the culture that I've been blown away with because I've spent a lot of time with your graduates interviewing them on the podcast, and they are all so upbeat. Their attitude is so positive. They're no, none of them are on any drugs, alcohol, tobacco, anything like that. Um, how is it you maintain that culture when the predominant culture in our society wants to say work really kind of sucks? If you can get out of working hard, you're going to feel a lot better than if you don't, if you have to work. How do you get the drudgery out of the work ethic?
Our our students, we call the participants in at the Other Side Academy students. They're coming there to learn a new way to live life. They're coming to learn those basic life skills that they either never learned at home or that they or forgotten, that they got trained, but then their lives fell apart through their choices and often terrible things that were done to them. But now they're adults and they've spent, our average student at the academy has been arrested over 25 times. They're people who've cycled in and out. They haven't been able to maintain a job. They might have been hired a bunch of times, but they haven't been able to keep a job. If they would, they wouldn't be headed to jail or prison one more time. That's where we can step in and say, are you tired of living that kind of life? Are you tired of not being productive? Often they're in their 30s or 40s, or we even have some in their 50s and 60s who've been for decades not being productive, not having the type of life that we all hope to grow up and have. And at some point they're ready to say, I know I need to do something long. I know I need to do something hard. And I really would like to um, be be proud of something in my life. And for many of us, work brings that satisfaction that gives us saying, I feel good about what I'm doing because of what I my work that I'm doing. And that's what we find when people, there's just immense pride among the guys who are working in the moving company to be a high top rated, to get that 5-star Google review, to have a customer say, wow, we've never seen customer service like this before. It's amazing to read those reviews, and they take tremendous pride, and all of a sudden they're doing something that they can be proud of instead of something that that eats away at their soul.
Yeah. I want to show an interview now we did just today. This is with a woman named Candice. Um, I was I was blown away by her attitude, how she's feels like she's really discovered something extremely significant about life and how to be happy and productive, just like you said. I'll play this clip for you now. And where were you before you became a part of the village?
So what do you mean by that?
Like, where were you staying, living? Most people were homeless, I know.
I've been homeless a lot throughout my adult life. Right before I came to the other side village, I was actually at the other side academy.
All right.
And yeah, some things happened. And Dave DeRocha was like, "Oh, how do you feel about, certain things?" And so now I'm here. So
So you did the whole 2.5 year program?
I was at the academy for 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did you find you got there that perhaps you couldn't get at a regular shelter or sober living place?
So when I got to the academy, I was thinking it was more like a treatment center, but like different than a treatment center. I don't know. I know like when I used to stay in shelters and stuff like that. Like I'm to just to put it short, I'm an addict. Okay, so pretty much my homeless situation was because of my addiction. Like I was on all types of different drugs. Okay, and at the shelters, like I could use all I wanted to. Nobody said anything. I can use in the shelter, out the shelter. I got to the academy. I couldn't even leave the academy, so it was just like I couldn't go get anything. So that was a main thing. And if I'm, and I was the kind of person was a little bit, arrogant, maybe a little too aggressive at times, and they'll call me out on it. So I learned a lot about myself during that time, like, because there was a reason. I mean, yeah, I was on drugs and everything, but it was more than just the drugs. It was my personality. Like, I couldn't keep friends very long. I couldn't keep a job very long. I'm a very hardworking person, but I couldn't keep the job because I was treating people and stuff like that. So I learned to shape up a few things before I got here to the other side village. Oh, I'm at the prep school now, but and I'm still fine tuning some things because it's more than just the drugs.
There's a big debate going on whether it's better to be more compassionate toward homeless people or hold them to greater level of personal accountability. Where do you fall along the line of that debate?
So from my own personal experience, I think it's better to hold a person to a higher standard of accountability. And I'm just gonna talk about me. So it's like I was the kind of person I'm always blaming somebody else for my situation. Um, bl- it's not everybody's fault. Yep, bad things happen to everybody. It's just about the accountability part is important because the person needs to know what they're doing wrong so they can do it better. If you just sit there, pat them on the back, is it still gonna be okay? That ain't enough. A person needs to know where they falling short at, and if they don't know where they falling short at, how they gonna change? So and then that person has to be willing to accept what's being told to them, so they can be like, okay, and make the decision on their own. Okay, so maybe I need to stop doing this and start doing this instead. Yeah.
And the model of the academy and the village is all peer support, and the coaches are all have prior lived experience of homelessness or addiction. If they were just regular counselors with, say, psychology degrees, do you think it would still work?
It'll work as long as the people like this stayed in the program. Like once they graduated, it wouldn't because it's all like because the psychologists or whatever, the therapists, that's all like textbook experience. You know what I mean? Like they don't even know they memorized it, filled in some little bubble on the little bubble sheet test. You got the little degree. It's different when you actually been there, done that, and you know exactly what's going on. And then it's easier to when for a person like myself to get over on a system like that because you're just like this person don't know really. So when you got somebody that's been there done it already, you can't pull the wool over their eyes because they already know because they did it too. you
So
know
that level of ownership that she takes for her problems, and she said before coming to the academy, she was so used to blaming other people for her problems and mistakes. How do you instill that into the culture there?
One of the most powerful sources of influence is um, peer feedback. Um, it's, we all have sources of influence in our lives where it might be, it might be a partner, it might be a parent, it might be a boss, it might be um, a ecclesiastical leader, it might be a therapist, and people who've run into challenges in their life um, often start closing off those spheres of influence. Someone who's using drugs, they say, well, it's very common for them to destroy all the relationships in their life because they're not trustworthy. They might be stealing from them. They might be manipulating them. And so those people distance themselves and and they no longer become sources of influence in that person's life because they're not safe to be around. And we all have people, almost everyone that I know has someone in their life who's um, fallen into this trap of these toxic behaviors due to addiction, and that often leads to criminal behaviors. And so how can you then bring, society has coercive influences. Let's imprison someone and let's incarcerate them and prevent them, and that's a good thing because it keeps them from harming others. but there's very little correction that happens, very little behavioral change that happens in someone's life while they're incarcerated. And that's why you see such high level of recidivism of people leaving and then repeating. They haven't changed those underlying behaviors. And that's one of the core things that we focus on at the Other Side Academy and at the Other Side Village is let's focus on those underlying behaviors that led to the addiction, that led to the criminal behavior. And those are things that hopefully we all learn in our homes of saying, okay, how do you become accountable for your actions? How do you have integrity? How do you have a good work ethic? How do you set the right boundaries and let people know, no, I'm not willing to do that. Many of our participants, students, were introduced to drugs by mom and dad. It's hard to kind of learn all that stuff when you're getting high as an 8-year-old, with mom and dad.
Yeah, I was amazed by that. A lot of the folks who have been on the program from the Other Side Academy have just said exactly that. They learned when they were 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
Mom and dad were doing the same thing. They didn't get any kind of punishment for using drugs. It was just normal. And when you're instilled with that behavior, it seems like your normal then becomes drugs. Your normal way of dealing with life and escaping it, life and its trials and difficulties is drugs. So Dave DeRocher's been on this program. So why does the 90-day program seem to not work to change behavior long term?
To change, for someone who's been doing this for decades, there are some people who a 90-day program is going to work. But for someone who's been doing this for many years, for decades, who've been arrested 25 times, who've been in and out of multiple programs, sometimes you need a long period of time. So at the academy, it's 30 months, 2.5 years that you're there practicing living the right way every day, doing it over and over and over again until it just becomes natural and it's not odd. And sometimes they're learning some of these things for the very first time because they never learned them in the home. Sometimes it's just a renewal. It's not just rehabilitation. Sometimes it's habilitation. And sometimes even 2.5 years isn't long enough. And that's one of the beauties of our model is we're not based upon some external funding source who says, no, at this day, 730, you've got to leave. It doesn't matter if you're ready or not. It's kind of like, okay, if you need more time to get ready, let's give you that time. And that's the beauty of our model. If someone needs 3 years, if someone needs 4 years, if you've been doing it for 4 decades, there's a lot of stuff that you got to unpack. There's some different brain wiring that you have to rewire doing that. And all the evidence shows that we call it the dosage effect. The longer that someone is in a highly accountable peer program, the better they do when they leave. And so we have half of our students at the Other Side Academy choose to stay longer than the 2.5 years voluntarily. There's no court, there's no requirement. They just choose to stay longer because they like what's happening to them and they have a chance to give back to the community that's helped them with their life. And then at some point, we help them transition back into society. We help them give a job. 100% of our graduates are placed into full-time employment. And then 7 out of 10 of all of our graduates since we first started have been able to remain crime-free, drug-free, and employed. And that we think that's a remarkable statistic of saying this is working. This is being effective at bringing about not just staying clean and sober, but whole person change. They're able to get a job and keep a job.
And no taxpayer money.
Yeah, and we're doing this without, we're able to cover 100% of our operating costs with the revenues that we generate within our moving company, our thrift store, our construction company. That covers our operating costs, and we're able to, and that allows us to say, you need to stay longer? You can, because we're funding it, not someone else.
Yeah, and I got to tell you what I hear on the street about from the naysayers. They want to call it indentured servitude or slavery. They want to say that you guys are taking advantage of people to earn a profit. What do you say to that?
Um, I would say it's voluntary. They can leave anytime. They're not chained there. If they were chained, I would say, boy, there's probably some meaning. But the if someone wants to leave, the door's open. They can leave. If it was a involuntary servitude, why would over 50% choose to stay longer, even when there's no legal implications of them leaving?
Yeah.
And there's lots of models that say you're going to work and not get paid for. If I'm a nursing student and I'm going through all my classes, but then at some point I start practicing being a nurse. But I'm not getting paid as a nursing student. I'm working in a hospital alongside other people who are getting paid, but I'm not getting paid. Why is that not indentured servitude?
Well,
Why?
the other point is like if you were at a 2.5 year vocational school, you would still have to pay them, the school. You guys are often offering it for free, including room and board,
Yeah.
and employers are lined up.
And we make it really clear as part of our interview process that they won't get paid. This is voluntary. You have to ask us to come. We don't take it. Someone, if the judge says, you've got to go here, they have to ask. And then we interview them. And if we feel like they're sincere in wanting to do it. And again, it's it's a nonprofit. No one owns the Other Side Academy. So as the Other Side Academy generates profits, all that money has to go back into the program. It doesn't go to some owner or some investor or, um, you know, donors. The money that Joseph Grenny has donated to the Other Side Academy, the millions that he's donated, he's not getting rich out of giving his money away to the Academy. He's devoted his time and his fortune to making this exist.
Well, I also think what you're doing is saving taxpayers likely a massive amount of money because isn't it something like $58,000 per inmate per year to keep them in prison?
Yeah, and our average student, as they come in, has 6 years of incarceration suspended. So if you say, okay, if we have 100 people and each of them have 6 years, that's 600 years of incarceration that we'd be paying at 58,000. It comes into the tens of millions of dollars each year that the taxpayers would be paying if they weren't allowed to come to the Other Side Academy.
Yeah, and I you look at this from a big picture standpoint. I mean, we just had the mayor of New York elected, a Democrat socialist, because there is this idea that capitalism is broken, that criminals, there's too many people locked up in prison. There's not enough people who are getting enough services from the government. They're asking, rather than asking what they can do for their country, they're asking what their country can do for them. Your system and what you're doing here, this social experiment you're engaged in, runs completely contrary to what you're seeing manifesting back east and what they're asking for more and more in big cities. So how does this how do you sell this to people who believe the government and the billionaires owe them more money?
You know, we would agree that there are many parts of the system that are broken and aren't serving uh, those in need well. And we understand why people would look for other solutions because there are so many who are um, in just terrible misery and hard places, and the system just isn't doing its job well to do that. And you know, we don't have a political orientation. We don't see ourselves as a conservative or a liberal, we feel like we're in the business of saving people and helping people be their best selves. And I think that's a universal principle that both sides of the spectrum would agree on. We get people out of jail, which is a liberal, concept. But we pay our own way, which is traditionally more of a conservative. So we feel like we have elements of our model that both sides could say, yeah, that's something we could get around. And the most important part to us is, are there policies and processes that allow people to really um, be effective at becoming a different person than and being able to thrive living their life.
Yeah, I agree with you. Letting people out of jail is definitely more of a liberal idea, and that's part of what Zoran wants to do, and what you find a decriminalization of drug use and things like that. However, the idea that you're holding people more to account for their misdeeds and their behaviors, as opposed to giving them a psychological crutch that they can carry around to get to justify self-medication, that's such a common problem in our society, that people say I'm self-medicating because I got ADD, I got PTSD. Isn't that a battle you're kind of fighting against there?
Uh, Absolutely. We think that you know if you look 20 years ago, the pendulum, the three strike laws, let's incarcerate everyone. That while it got dangerous people off the streets, it didn't help them change. It seems like the pendulum has swung the other side of saying, let's not incarcerate anyone. And we see terrible things happen where someone who hasn't changed their behaviors gets arrested, and within hours later they're back on the streets, and then someone gets harmed. That's a failure. That shouldn't happen. Someone shouldn't be being released if they're still a danger to society. And we think that we offer an alternative, saying, okay, for those who are incarcerated and want to change, we have a path where you can change and then be able to be back in society without creating that level of harm. And those who don't want to change, then they probably deserve to keep staying incarcerated. But we think it's a mistake to let people out if they're unwilling to change and do something different with their life.
Yeah, switching gears a little bit from the criminal justice reform that you guys do to the homeless side of things and what you're doing at the village. Homelessness is arguably the biggest problem in downtown Salt Lake City right now. It's affecting all the small businesses. I talk to them a lot, and they tell me that they're coming in and bothering customers. I had a woman on the program who left downtown Salt Lake because a man was showing up and masturbating in front of her hair salon, and the police would just stop responding to calls. And the problem has escalated to the point where we're spending more and more money every year on homelessness, and we're getting more and more and more homeless people. And my question is the amount of spending simply producing more homeless people because more services are being provided to them?
Again, this is one of the areas we would agree that the system is has uh, a fatal flaw in how homeless services are provided. Um, what we have are a series of siloed service providers, someone who does detox, and they may do detox really well. But then when someone leaves detox, where do they go? Well, if there isn't a viable solution of saying, now that you're clean and sober, let's get you onto the next step of your page, where do they go? They go, okay, I don't have a place to live. I don't have a job. I'm going to struggle to get a job because maybe I have a record. They go back to Pioneer Park, back to downtown, back to the Rio Grande area, and soon they're using again, and maybe they have a mental health challenge, and so they'll go to it's tremendous providers of mental health, the Huntsman Mental Health Services, or the other Valley Behavioral Health, or places like that, and they're great providers. But again, what happens when they leave? Um, and our government is saying, okay, we're going to fund you and we're going to hold you accountable for, okay, when they leave, are they clean and sober, or have you helped address their mental health needs? And they're doing that. But who's saying, okay, we need to look at the whole spectrum of services? Um, and it's like, uh, if you've played the game, the kids' game, Chutes and Ladders, you go up a few levels and you'll hit a slide and then you'll come back down to one level. The way the current homeless services system is set up, every ladder goes back to the beginning. I mean, every chute, every slide goes back to the beginning. It isn't even just I'm going one level down.
Yeah.
You're starting all the way over again, and now you're at the back of the end for services. So if you talk to people, they're repeated high frequency users of the system. That's where, rather than getting someone off the street, we're just cycling more and more people over and over again through, really great programs, but they don't help them move to the next step in the process. And that's one of the things I think we've been able to do. And there's some other providers who are doing that as well, who are saying, we're going to help you when you get out of the detox. We'll be there. We'll pick you up. We'll take you to the next step. We'll help you get stabilized with your mental health meds. Then when you're done with that, we'll pick you up. We'll take you to the next step. Now let's help you get your driver's license and clear up all things. Let's make sure you can get access to the right, medications. Let's help you think about how do you get back into the workforce, and let's help you practice doing that, working in one of our social enterprises. And now all those things that we do, and we do this in this transitional stage, we call it the Other Side Prep School, that allow them, and it could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, it could be longer, but can you demonstrate that you have the capacity to thrive living independently? And if you don't, let's keep you there a little longer till you can show those habits. But
And that all happens at the prep school before they get their housing.
And then once they can demonstrate and show that they have the capacity to live independently, that they can pay rent, that they can maintain a source of income, that they can be responsible and keep their place clean and drug free, then then they qualify to be able to move into the village. So we're not just taking someone straight from the streets and move into the village. We know they're going to bring all the chaos, all the destructive behaviors, all those underlying behaviors we talked about before into their housing. And that's what we see with housing all throughout the city. People move straight from the streets into housing, and then the housing get filled with drugs and prostitution and dealing and manufacturing and just terrible things. And it's so hard to change your life when all that's going around you.
I want to play a clip now from Josh, who works at your donut shop, where he talks about exactly what you just said. The problem he found waiting for housing. I've heard that so many times talking to homeless people on the streets. I'm waiting for my housing, waiting to get qualified. There's a infinitely long waiting list for free housing right now. Yeah. And so let's hear what Josh had to say. All right. So, Josh, how do you like working here at the Other Side Donuts?
Oh, I love working here. Selling the donuts to customers is quite fun. Especially me selling my favorite donuts, which is this one over here, the grown-up PB&J, the pumpkin, the Bavarian zebra. All of them are good donuts, but I got a few personal favorites.
Yeah. So you said you've been here now 6 months. What was your life like prior to coming here?
So my life prior to coming here was staying at homeless shelters, just trying to mind my own business, but getting, picked on, getting fights that I didn't want to be involved in, dealing with a rough crowd, and just dealing with drugs. So
And that's basically what you found in the public shelters that were available, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
So you weren't feeling like transformation happening
No,
there.
not at all.
Do you want to say what facility you were in?
I was at the Pamela Atkinson Center. So
Yeah. So when you compare what you have here through TOSA, are you still in the prep school or are you in the
yeah,
village?
I'm still in the prep school. So
What are they providing there that you don't get at the other shelter?
so at the shelter they say they provide things. They helped me get my social security card, which was awesome. Um, I also got my state ID as well. That's what they like, just the basics. But like housing wise, it took forever just to get. So I was like, I don't want to keep in here. It's taking forever just to get housing. So
So you were on a waiting list to try to get in your own housing?
yeah, some people were there like for years just trying to get housing, and one of my friends that was there, he had was waiting 2 to 3 years just to get housing.
And that's the case for most people there. They're just
Yeah.
waiting for their housing.
Yeah, they're just waiting for free housing and whatnot.
They're not there to transform their lives into
No,
better people.
none at all. They're just there, just wasting away.
That's the part I'm confused by. Because if I was running a homeless shelter, why would the next step of somebody staying in a shelter be permanent supportive housing instead of able-bodied, get a job and get into your housing that you're able to pay for yourself? How come it's so many people say I'm here waiting for my housing? How do you know how that mindset developed and why the caseworkers seem to encourage that rather than discourage it?
I think it's a common approach for government to say we're going to solve these really complex problems through assets. Let's give them a house. Let's give them vouching. Let's give them a meal. Let's give them, a voucher for services. And these assets will solve their problem. If someone's hungry, let's give them food. Well, that makes sense. But we've got a clip from Governor Gavin Newsom, over a decade ago saying, if someone's hungry, we feed them. If someone's homeless, we're going to give them a house. And that's how we're going to solve the housing. And in 10 years, we'll have the housing problem settled. Well, California's in worse shape than ever. That this housing first model has been an abject failure across the country. Every place that's really embraced it, the problem's gotten worse. You can't solve these complex societal problems with assets. You have to focus on these underlying behaviors. And government is really bad at helping people change behaviors. They you just can't think of many programs where the government has really succeeded of saying they're not good with changing people incarcerated. They're not good with helping people who are homeless. The government doesn't have the right structure, the right mentality, the right approach.
And I've interviewed homeless folks and I've asked them about their relationship with the caseworker. And I've heard it said a couple times where they said, my caseworker says I can't work. I'm incapable of working. So I'm not working. And they're disempowered rather than empowered. And I'm wondering, what is the mindset there? Why are they creating people who are much more dependent than independent?
Well, it's a mindset that we strongly disagree with. We think that there's an inherent capacity in people that, given the right circumstances and the right environment, that can flourish. And people that society has written off and said, you're no longer capable. We think that, one phrase we've used is the soft bigotry of low expectations. That if you believe they're just never going to be able to do any more than that we're doing, so we're just going to have to provide palliative care to them the rest of their lives. And as we've gotten to know many of our neighbors and seeing them in the right environment just flourish and produce just amazing things and be able to have so many talents that have been within them, but they just haven't had the capacity or the right um, petri dish for that to flourish and grow and develop. And we think that's something that really needs to change within our system, of this belief of saying people just don't have the capacity, so we just have to take care of them the rest of their life.
Well, and again, it's like there are myriad diagnoses for people to. It's like a grab bag to you take to say you're incapable of working. I'm a chronic drug addict. I can't do it. I got PTSD. I got ADD. I need constant stimulation. I can't have a boring job. And then this seems like the system is set up to accommodate each of these disabilities and to say, oh yeah, well then Social Security disability. And if you look at the numbers, the roles for Social Security disability, especially in highly dense urban populations, has increased significantly, and that gives the paycheck to the person who's then put in permanent supportive housing, saying, yeah, you're legitimately disabled. Here you go. Here's your apartment. But as we've reported on the Magnolia Apartments in downtown Salt Lake City, it's a quick pathway for death.
Yeah.
And that's something that's not really covered in the local media, how high the death rate is when you just give somebody an apartment and a diagnosis and all the drugs they can use. Why has it been so hard for our leaders in the homeless, I call it the homeless industrial complex, why has it been so hard for them to open their eyes and see how terrible this system is?
You know, I think the intentions are good. I think the someone in a legislative position isn't an expert in how to address, and many times they don't know the options that they have, and so they rely, well, what are other places doing? What do they do? What does the and you saw city after city and state after state adopting, oh, this housing first model had some good initial data. But if you look at the data of some of the initial housing first models, the way it's implemented across the country doesn't match those initial models. They don't have the elements in it that really brought around those good results. But they all bought into this model and said, oh, it's evidence-based and it's supportive, and if you're not doing it, you're inhumane, and you're not really, you don't really care. And while the efforts are well intentioned, we think they've been misguided, and we think that there is a more humane way. It isn't humane to allow someone to live in the squalor and the misery of just the terrible conditions on the streets and in the encampments and things. And most of the people that we're talking to, who say, I want to change, they want to live in a place that's sober. They say it's really hard to turn your life around if everyone around you is using. And they want to be in a place that's safe. That overwhelmingly, that's one of the things that over and over they say, we love the feeling of safety that we have at the village, that we don't have to worry about getting, many of those in the homeless community are victims of terrible crimes and assaults and of battery and of things, and to be in a place where they don't have to worry about it. One resident told me, this is the first time I've slept all night coming into the Other Side Prep School. I haven't felt this level of peace and safety for years, and that to me seems pretty humane.
And the one thing I hear a lot too, when you're trying to stay in a shelter or permanent supportive housing, and all night long people are ranting from their mental illness or their drug addiction, staying up all night using
Yeah.
meth, there's no chance of working a job the next day.
Yeah.
There's no way. And I was lucky enough to be invited by a resident at Magnolia. She wanted me to just see where she was living and the conditions because she was getting kicked out. And I haven't actually released this footage yet because I want to protect their identity. And it was 3 people who agreed to be interviewed in the apartment unit. And then I come down and they asked me, "What the heck are you doing here? You're not allowed in here." And they wanted to see my ID, and I said, "Well, I'm not buying drugs. I'm a reporter." Those 3 people, she was getting kicked out already. The other 2 were, another guy was locked up in jail, and then the third one was kicked out. So rather than looking at actually solving the problem, they're trying to cover up the people who are whistleblowing. And I guess my point is, this problem has persisted since the day they opened up places like the Pamela Atkins Center. And Pamela Atkins is this great homeless leader. She's a wonderful woman, has an amazing attitude of compassion. But do you believe that this attitude of compassion is actually killing more people than it's helping?
I think it leads to those kind of results. If you look at the city of Portland, Oregon, they passed a law that said we're going to allow any drugs to be used and we're not going to prosecute any drugs. It was supposed to also include we're going to help people who are using to find the resources needed to kick their addictions. But they didn't have the funding for that. So they allowed that within 3 years you had a 300% increase
Miserable
in
failure.
in overdose. I mean, what if you think of a government policy that leads to a 300% increase in overdose, what a terrible step that was. And I think with the effort of saying, okay, we're trying to be compassionate, there are ways that you can those policies can lead to a more horrendous outcome than you would ever hope to have.
Yeah. So when you look at the government and the Utah Homeless Services Board, I know all those people are awesome people. They're very intelligent. Their intentions are great. And so I don't disparage any of them personally. But I listened to these meetings, and they invited Mo Egan to sit on the board,
Yeah.
and he said the most insightful thing of the whole meeting. I sat through the 3 hours, and he said, just like you pointed out earlier, it's like you go into the Odyssey house, 90 days, everybody's waiting, and a lot of people still use while they're there. And you go on the merry-go-round, and then you come back right where you started, even the same park bench you started at, where you were an alcoholic or a drug user. They'll drop you off right there again. Still, we fund Odyssey House in the state of Utah to a huge sum. I tried to find out what the exact number is in dollars. And certainly it does some good for some people, like you pointed out, but for most people, it's just a merry-go-round. They get off, they get right back to where they started again. What needs to happen to the Utah Homeless Services Board? Obviously, they're getting a new director. Tyler Clancy has been appointed by Governor Cox to be running that. But what else needs to happen so that the right people are serving on that board, so that we can fix these problems and have better systems in place?
I think there's a couple of things that need to happen. And again, I think there's some great service providers who provide services within their silo. But one of if you think of a car, when I buy a car, I don't think, man, I'm getting the best transmission there is, but the other parts, don't go together well. I want a car that's functioning, that's all integrated, and we don't have an integrated system that delivers a well-functioning car. We have these silos of providers who do good jobs within their silo, and it's not fault of the providers, it's the fault of um, of the legislature and of the
Lack of
government,
information.
of saying, rather than fund silos, we need to fund an integrated solution. And second, you know, we all know if a car's, we have all these resources to know if a car's a lemon or not. If we buy it and next week 80% of the cars fall apart and need repair and significant, you have all these reporting ways of saying, oh, this is a quality car. It has, it's going long last, it's low maintenance, it's, good gas mileage. We understand, oh, this is a good car. We don't have a unified system to report, oh, this process is helping people live a drug-free, crime-free, employed, and independent housed life. We need a system, and the government then should reward those providers who are helping people go from the streets and the encampments, and the shelters, to be able to live independently. And that's where I think the government could play a great role of saying, let's reward the whole system, not just the silos. Let's integrate the system so someone doesn't just leave a detox and then they have no place to go. Or they leave Odyssey House and don't have any place to go. That they leave a shelter and then they don't have any place to go. They leave Huntsman and don't have any place to go. You know,
Yeah. So I think it was back in the 1970s, homeless reform was under state control, under government control, and they moved to a NGO model. And they decided, no, this is not working having one single provider. Let's let NGOs pop up and we'll fund them instead. And the idea, I think, being that the system was too complex for a management or a hierarchy to manage. I haven't studied enough to know that much about it, but you said talk about the silos being all independent and the car not working together, and all the pieces sort of just aren't congruent. Do you think going back to a government run model or having just one provider would be a better way than funding all these NGOs?
but I'm not an expert about those early efforts either. But from my understanding, is they weren't giving the NGOs or the nonprofits and providers, you have responsibility, um, all the way through. You don't have this super provider who's saying, okay, we're going to help make sure they get detox, the rehabilitation, we're making sure that, we're addressing addiction, we're addressing mental health. We don't. So the current is, okay, you've got these siloed organizations, but no one's helping them go
Nobody's
through.
passing the baton
No
to the
one's
next
helping them.
move.
And you could create an integrated system where you still have these separate providers, but someone then has an overall responsibility of saying, we're going to take them through, and we'll find the providers that provide the most effective service. And that's where, again, if government says, okay, we're going to start funding those who are effective at getting people back on their feet and being productive citizens, we're going to fund them more than the people who aren't very effective at it. That's how the rest of the economy works. The market economy tells us, okay, this is a good product, and so customers buy it. And if it's a bad product, fewer people buy it. And we don't have that. The feedback mechanism isn't working within this system, and we need to create that um, feedback system of and rewarding and reporting on who's doing this job well. And we're the first to say, if there's someone else who can do better than what we're doing, man, let's encourage and embrace and learn from them and share those.
But you guys don't take government funding, and you don't take it because you want greater control.
So um, we don't take government funding for operations. We have taken money for the village for capital expansion, building the infrastructure, building the homes, building the housing. And we've had tremendous partners from the Office of Homeless Services. We've had tremendous partners from Salt Lake County. Salt Lake City has helped us. So I want to recognize and honor the support we've gotten from government, but we have stayed away and we haven't taken any money for operational. And usually operational comes with a lot of restrictions. So we were talking earlier about some of the HUD restrictions that often get tied into. So we want to be able to do what, by being operationally self-sufficient, we're not tied to, if someone needs more than 12 months in our prep school, great, we can do it because we're funding it. It's not tied to.
So that's the whole point.
And if you talk to some of the people you've been talking to, interviewing, you'll often hear them say, I was no longer billable, so I had to leave. To me, that's kind of, our system is set up where, okay, if I'm in a surgery and my billing only covers so much anesthesia, but my surgery goes longer than my anesthesia, well, you're no longer billable, and so we're going to have to turn the anesthesia off. That's what happens to, okay, I'm in a 30-day program and I'm thriving and I'm going, but I don't have it.
Yeah.
I don't have that foundation yet.
Makes no sense.
So we're going to cut the funding and you're going to have to leave because our funding only covers 30 days. Well, what if I need longer than 30 days? What if I need longer than 90 days?
Yeah.
And you're no longer billable, so good luck.
Yeah. Well, I want to pause you. And when we get back, I want to talk about what are going to be the best solutions moving forward with the new homeless campus they're going to build, if you believe in it, if you buy into it, and how you have a government funding source that is going to allow people to stay as long as they need to, if that's possible. We'll talk about that when we get back. Welcome back. So we've been talking to the Other Side Academy CEO, Tim Stay. Thanks for joining me again, Tim.
My pleasure.
Yeah, if you didn't watch the first segment, go back and watch that because we go into everything concerning homelessness and addiction, criminal justice reform. But we wanted to talk about what the solutions are now from the Utah Homeless Services Board. They found a location to build this vast homeless campus that offers all these different resources. There's potential problems that it's in a mosquito-infested area and that it's far away from the city, whereas the last big homeless campus was right in the middle of the city. What do you think of the whole plan and the idea?
Well, I think it's still a real fluid plan, and I'm actually have more hope in the direction of Utah getting it right today than even 3 years ago when we started the Other Side Village. I think Tyler Clancy will be a tremendous leader. I think he's going to evaluate every possibility and some of the early plans that we see. And I haven't seen a final set of plans, so I don't know all of the things they're looking at. I think from some of the early stuff, there's some things are new and are filling a gap that don't exist, especially the mental health area. I think that's a missing resource that we don't have. Utah hasn't had a great answer for, of someone who really needs serious mental health services.
There's so many homeless people with mental health problems.
And we're focusing on that population specifically, but there's some that are even more severe than what we can handle who need more institutionalized help on a long-term basis than someone who might be able to manage their mental health so that they can live an independent life. So I think there's some areas there. Some of the areas we think there's probably some duplication of services, and there's no need to do that. with the resource centers, some of the other options that are out there in the marketplace. So I think it's all going to be reviewed really well, and I'm really excited for Tyler Clancy's leadership to bring about a solution. I have seen a seismic shift in kind of especially here in Utah, of this. 3 or 4 years ago, the only solution that could be really considered was the housing first model. Today, it's gone 180 degrees, where they're saying we recognize the deep flaws of the housing first model, and we're calling our approach human first, instead of housing first. That let's focus, and I think the state, many of the things, the pathways of success, the pathways of thriving that Randy Shumway has been promoting. I think a lot of those things are focused on let's help the individual, change their underlying behaviors. Housing is going to be part of it, but it's not the foundation. The human change is the foundation. I think we're seeing a lot of support for that concept.
Well, the encouragement to get people to work to whatever capacity they can, to me, seems so fundamental, because if you are in an apartment all day and you are sitting there left to your own devices, the idleness is the devil's playground.
Yeah.
Is a very famous phrase, and I think that's absolutely true, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you talk to the people going through the prep school in the village, one of their highest levels of satisfaction is, I get to be productive, I get to work, I get, working in the donut shop, they're proud of that. They find purpose, like all of us find purpose in the work that we do. They find fulfillment, they find meaning. They can, I think it's so harmful to a soul of saying, I don't have anything to contribute to life or society, and so I don't. No one's going to allow me to do anything. We reject that idea.
Yeah. And so finally, what you've done at the village is absolutely amazing. And now people are visiting and getting tours all the time. More money is coming into the village. You got another contribution from Gail Miller. And what you've done is just not only an incredible model for getting people off the streets, but it's like an incredible housing model. And I'm wondering, why not take what you've done there, these small tiny homes that are $100,000 and each, and replicate that all along the Wasatch Front to solve our affordable housing crisis? Has that been a thought?
Absolutely. We think this is a viable model, for not just for housing those who are homeless, but this would be a great model for first home buyers. It costs us, when you look at just building the house, is about $80,000. When you add all the utilities and the sidewalks and the street lights and streets, it comes out to be about $140,000 per unit. Well, you add in some markup for that for a developer, you're getting a home for under $200,000. You can't find homes for
No, the median
$200,000.
house right now is $500,000.
Yeah, so first-time home buyers, for first responders, for educators, for the people we really want to make sure that they have, stability in their lives because they serve our community. We think that this would be a great model that could be adopted for housing. And
so the governor, who's said he wants 30,000 affordable housing units by 2035, I can't remember the date, but is he paying attention to that?
We pitched the idea to him a few months ago, and I know they've got a tremendous outreach of what they're doing, and we're happy to help if this is one of the ideas that they think has merit.
That's really great. I had Ivory Innovations executive leader, Kimberly, on the program, and I pointed out how it seems to me if you just had a train going out to where the cheap land is, you could put these out there and not create such a vehicular dependent society, but allow first time home buyers. We have people working for us in their 20s. They have no hope of buying a home.
Yeah.
Do you think the developers don't want to see something like this? That perhaps could be a resistant point because if you increase the supply so much, then rents are going to probably go down.
I, I, I'm not knowledgeable enough to know why that. Part of I think part of the challenge is land is really expensive all along the Wasatch Front, and so um, it may be that the state needs to say, okay, this is state land, or maybe some of this BLM land. If that, who knows what's going to happen there. But if some of that land becomes available and the state says, let's make this into affordable housing, that could be one way to keep the prices.
Yeah, because you stack people on top of each other is way more expensive than if you just put them in a tiny home.
Yeah.
And it seems like we only have this like stackable idea, other than what you guys did with your prep school, which was
Yeah.
also a really cool, innovative thing. But I do you have anything else you'd want to add to that?
Well, I just want to say we've had people living in the village for 9 months now. So we're coming on just over 10 months. So we don't have a long track record, and these are early results. But the early results are so dramatic and transformational. Our average resident at the village has been homeless for over 9 years. These are people we have some who've been over 2 decades. That's a long time to be on the street. To transform your life where you're not living a structured, you're not keeping a job, you're not having stable housing, you're in circumstances that are fraught with danger all the time. To be able to see them to transform into living in a safe, a beautiful home with a wonderful community, with the landscaping, with the houses, it's remarkable. And if you start looking at some of the data, when they come in, their average income is $118 when they've come in. How do you rent anything if you're making $118
Per month?
per month?
Oh my gosh, that's really low.
Many of them have felonies, so it's hard to get a job. It's hard to qualify for housing. But because we're providing the housing and we're providing employment, if they want to work with us, we can work with those things. Our average resident in the village, so coming in at $118, our average resident in the village is now bringing home an income of $200 or $2,600 a month, $2,600 a
Wow.
month. That's like we're seeing people who haven't had a car for years now getting a car. We had 4 of them just last weekend. First time in their life they ever took a vacation. They got in a van, pooled their resources, drove down to Southern California, went whale watching. They had never been on a vacation in their life, but now because they have a steady income, they're being able to participate in the things that are part of life for us that they've never participated in. That's so exciting to see. Here's a model that's working, that's changing lives, that's bringing about, and we're doing it without having to fund it through taxpayer dollars. Eventually, we're going to have over 456 homes in the village. Let's say that some of them are couples. We'll have over 500 people in the village. If we can have 500 people there, it will save the state over $29 million a year in what they're spending on homelessness right now. We think that's a pretty exciting story.
Yeah, that's totally amazing. I think that, Utah, we kind of have this spirit, like we can build things and we can solve problems, and you guys absolutely epitomize that. I just think you kind of have this dream team assembled, and you all have your component parts that you're really good at, and it really is truly amazing what you guys have done, and really and congratulations for 10 years,
Thank you.
and all the best to you guys moving forward. And because it seems like you're on the path to really have created a model that can be expanded throughout the country, and I guess you found that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting cities from across the country reaching out, even from other countries are saying, because everyone's struggling with this problem, everyone's trying to figure out how do we really help those who need the help and do it in a dignified and humane manner.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing, and I encourage everyone to go visit your website, go see for themselves the village. We were there today. It's incredible to go to the donut shop. I got the donuts in my car. I was going to show them right now, but they're amazing
Yeah,
donuts.
yeah.
It's just like they're really delicious, and I would love to do another segment all about that, but and talk to you about the core fundamental ideas. So
Okay.
maybe I can have you back. And
Anytime. It's been a real pleasure.
yeah, thanks so much, Tim.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to be learn more about Tim and Joseph and Dave, check out our current issue of Faces of Utah magazine. We profiled them as our face of leadership in Utah, and just an amazing story. Just wonderful guys, and it's just really probably my favorite Utah story right now, because biggest problems we're facing, homelessness and housing, they're solving those problems. And I encourage you to go out to their website, give a donation, help them transform the lives of more people. And it's theothersideacademy.com and theothersidevillage.com.
Correct.
And yeah, so you just keep updated on what they're doing, either by following them on their website, or go out to utahstories.com, subscribe to our free digital newsletter. If you want to subscribe to Faces or Utah Stories, you can do so there too. And please share this episode with a friend, smash the like button, and comment. We love your comments. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Clark's Auto is Utah's premier independent Subaru mechanic and auto shop. Check them out at clarksauto.com and on the back of Utah Stories magazine.